네, 2022 에듀테크 코리아 포럼 새로운 교육으로의 발걸음 디지털 플랫폼으로라는 주제를 가지고 3일간의 여정을 함께하고 계십니다.
We are holding this EdTech conference, and this is our last day. It's time to introduce you the last session, the EdTech trend C3, and the topic of this session is 2023 Global EdTech Trend CX for Every Innovation of Education. So with the penetration of the EdTech technologies, a lot of things has changed in the education fields. So many people are freely trying various technology into the education field, and people can freely create the contents and share them with anyone, and they can communicate and cooperate with other people in a space breaking barriers of time and space. In our last presentation, we will introduce advanced technologies. We are going to envision the future space for education. I would like to introduce three speakers. I'm sure that everyone has a really high expectation for these three presenters. First, we have Louisa Rosenheck, Director of Pedagogy at Kahoot. She has joined us through Zoom. Thank you. And next, from the HUNET Edutech R&D, we have Director Jungmin. He's probably the most expert in this area. And lastly, we have CEO Chaelin Lee from CLASSUM. I really look forward to your presentation. Now we will start with the first presentation. The presenter, Louisa Rosenheck. This presentation is titled Digital Playful Learning, and she'll be sharing some frameworks and guidelines for playful learning and introduce some examples of EdTech tools that embody play, creativity, and social learning in their interaction design. Louisa Rosenheck is a thought leader in the EdTech field with a passion for game-based learning and playful pedagogies. She is also a co-author of the book Resonant Games, and she teaches a graduate course in EdTech design at Harvard Graduate School of Education. And she spent over a decade doing research on digital games and creative learning at MIT, and she's now a director of pedagogy for the Kahoot group. I think Kahoot group is used widely by the participants for this forum, so I think many of you are very interested. Now we will start her presentation.
Well, to be here. So my name is Louisa Rosenheck, and as was stated, my background is in EdTech design, especially learning games, simulations, creative learning, and playful pedagogies. I have done research in all these areas and designed education technology tools. And currently, I'm the director of pedagogy at Kahoot. So I think many of you know Kahoot. We are an online learning platform with quizzes and interactive presentations that engage students in social ways. And we also provide content, and we work in across segments, across school, work, and home. So also of note is that Kahoot actually recently launched in Korea. So Kahoot is now available entirely in Korean. And through a partnership with CLASSUM, Kahoot is being distributed to lots of users across Korea. So it's wonderful to be here today. What I'm going to tell you about today is digital play. And I think a lot of us have been hearing a lot more about play recently. So today we're going to take a look at what this trend looks like, why we should care about it, and how you can take advantage of it for your learners, whether you're designing and developing tools or implementing tools in the classroom. So what trends are we seeing that are related to digital play? So we know a few things now. Since the pandemic, it's clear that digital learning is here to stay, right? There's no question anymore about whether technology is is supporting learning and whether it's going to be a part of education. But how can we leverage technology to get the best student outcomes and the deepest learning? This is still a question that many of us are exploring and thinking about from different angles. It's also clear these days coming out of the pandemic that it's harder than ever to keep students engaged and motivated. Many teachers are noticing that students are less engaged than even before the pandemic. So we really need to find ways to let students explore their interests and feel like what they're learning in school is relevant to them. And finally, we know that skills will be increasingly important for future careers and life. And these are skills that are not often being taught in schools. Schools have often focused on content knowledge, but we know that future-ready skills, 21st century skills, are so important for success in the future. So all of these things together kind of paint a picture of the current landscape in education. And to further support this, Kahoot recently did a survey of 8,000 teachers across the US, and some of the findings include that 60% of the teachers say that their students are less engaged and motivated than before the pandemic. So coming back to in-person school has not solved this. And 75% say their students are more engaged when they use play-based approaches, and that technology can help bring more student-centered learning and play-based learning. So these are opinions coming straight from teachers, and they really show us kind of what is going on, what are the trends and the challenges now in education. So what do we do about this? Students are disengaged, but there are some approaches, some pedagogies that seem really promising. Well, I'm here to talk about how digital play is an important part of the solution to these challenges. What we're going to talk about is, what does digital play look like? What's behind it? How do we know what it's teaching? And how can we use it? What are some of these examples? Okay, let's dig in. So what do we know about play? Here are a few takeaways from some of the research on learning and play, which there is a lot of research. So first of all, what does good learning through play look like? What characteristics should it have for us to know that learning is happening? Okay, so a lot of this work here comes from the Lego Foundation, and they do a lot of work on learning through play and creativity and how that looks in both digital and non-digital spaces. So I'm going to talk through briefly each of these 5 characteristics. In order for learning through play to happen, the play experience should be meaningful. So it should have some relevance to learners. They should see why they care and why they're going to use these ideas in the future, or in their own context, in the context of the play, they should be invested. It should matter to them. The next one is joyful. There should be something fun and engaging and really spark joy in students. And a lot of this comes when they're allowed to try things themselves and have some agency. So it's not just someone telling them what to do. That is very important for play. Another one of the elements is socially interactive. Play and humans are naturally social, and play is one of the most important ways that we explore our social nature. So being able to navigate with others, the play experience, being able to build on others' ideas and collaborate, all of this is very important for learning through play. Actively engaging. This means that students can make choices in their learning and in their play experience. They can try things, they can decide what to try, they can adjust. So they're really active and they're doing things during these play experiences. And finally, iterative. This one is also super important. So when you have a good learning experience, you should be able to get feedback and try again, improve things, make adjustments, try another strategy. And that is essential to play, where you have the freedom to try things in new ways, and it's essential to learning. So this is where we see learning and play really come together. So this framework, again, from the Lego Foundation, the characteristics of playful learning. When we think about digital play, we want as many of these elements as possible to be part of that experience. Now, another angle to think about learning through play is, what do we get out of playful learning? What are the learning outcomes? What are the benefits? And some of this work comes from a researcher at Harvard called Jack Shonkoff. So some of the additional benefits of play include executive function. When you're playing and you're navigating all of these situations, you are naturally engaging your executive functions and practicing and building those skills, which are very important for academics and for future of work and life and career. Social emotional skills. Throughout the pandemic, these have been really challenging. So it's really important for students to build their social emotional skills, interpersonal skills, and play is a great way to do that. Resilience. Students play and they practice in a low stakes environment. They practice trying things on, failing, trying again, and coming back from that. Self-esteem and independence. So seeing yourself as somebody who can make choices on their own and who can be good at things. These are so important for child development. And one more example is coping with challenges. We've all seen these past few years just how important it is in society to be able to navigate challenges and navigate uncertainty. And there's so many opportunities in playful experiences to build those skills and build confidence in those skills. So this just gives you a little taste from the research about what needs to be present for playful learning to really be done right and be meaningful. And when you have that, what are the benefits? What can come out of playful learning? So having that background, now we're going to look at some examples of what does playful learning actually look like. So here's one example. This is one of my favorite examples. I bet many of you are familiar with the Scratch platform. It is a blocks-based coding platform where students, including very young students, can create their own animations and games and interactives, all using a visual programming language. Now, what is so wonderful about Scratch, and why would I say that Scratch is playful? It's open-ended, so students can really explore. They can fail and iterate and try again. It's creative. It means that students can create things that are meaningful to them and that are joyful. They can make something that makes them go, oh, wow, that was so fun, and I did that. They can share those creations with others very easily, so it's very social. And an activity like Scratch develops hard skills, programming, computational thinking, but also self-expression, social emotional skills, collaboration, all of these kinds of things that are so important. So Scratch is one example of a digital tool for playful learning. The next one is Kahoot. So this comes from my own work. Kahoot is often played in a synchronous environment in classrooms. It's very engaging. Everybody is usually on the edge of their seat, wanting to see, did I get the right answer? Okay, who's on top of the leaderboard? So it's very engaging, even with the same kind of academic content, but in this format, it can be extra engaging. And it's social. So all of the students are in the room together. They're having this shared experience. They're talking about who got which question right. Why was that the right answer? How did you know that? So there ends up being a lot more discussion in a playful experience than there would be. Some other great things about Kahoot and the way it's designed is that it's a low barrier to create and to host. So anybody can not just use content on the platform, but create their own. And that makes it, again, going back to the elements of play, more meaningful and more joyful. So it can connect directly to your curriculum. It can be relevant to your classroom culture. All of these things, Kahoot makes it very easy to personalize. So when you're looking at digital technologies, this is a really important thing to keep an eye out for. And related to that, this flexible content. So people can create whatever they need. They can modify and adapt content that they find on the site, making it meaningful to them and a better, more valuable play experience. So Kahoot is another example of a playful digital tool, and we can see how some of these elements of playful learning are embedded into the design of the Kahoot platform. One more example that I'll share is called Zumbinis. This is a game that is available as an app. And in this game, you control these little characters called Zumbinis, and you have to figure out how each system works. So these are basically logic puzzles with problem solving. You have to find patterns and figure out which of the characters, which Zumbinis can get across this bridge, for example. And there are rules that students have to figure out. So Zumbinis is set up for a lot of exploration, really trying things, getting feedback. Oh, that didn't work. What other strategy should I use? There's problem solving and critical thinking, figuring out where did I go wrong? How should I do better next time? And then iterating, discussing with your peers, and trying again until you find success. So Zumbinis is a great example of a playful environment where students can explore a system and figure out how it works, and then use that knowledge to solve problems. And this is very relevant. All of these skills are exactly what students will need to do when they're in the workplace. So this is an example of how logical thinking can be developed through play, which can then be applied to all kinds of situations in life. So these were a few examples of what playful learning can look like in digital tools. Now, there are lots of other EdTech, lots of other tools that are also exploratory and creative and student-centered. But I will tell you, there are also lots of education technologies that aren't so much like that, that aren't so playful. There are many EdTech tools that replicate conventional pedagogy and don't take us further. And those tools also have their place. Those are important tools to have, but this is a key difference that we want to look for when we're choosing education technologies that leverage playful learning. We want to look for those elements of play, and we want to find places where that tool can build those important future-ready skills that we care so much about, that we know can come out of play. Now, what do these examples that I shared, what do they all have in common? Well, one area that they all connect is around these 4 pillars of learning. And this is research that has come from Hirsch-Pasek and Zosch and some other researchers. They have distilled 4 pillars of learning for educational apps, so specific to the digital context. When you have these 4 elements, you know that students are going to be engaged in good learning. So what are these elements? We have active involvement. We saw that in all of the examples. You're making choices, you're doing things, you're taking action in the app or on the platform. Engagement with learning materials. So it's not passive. You're not just absorbing it. You're really creating in Scratch or in Zumbinis. You're trying things out. You're trying your own strategies and seeing what works. So you're really engaged. We have meaningful experiences. As we talked about with Scratch and Kahoot, you can create content that's your own, that's relevant to your life and your classroom. And social interaction. So many of these apps, whether it's built in to maybe a chat platform or if it's sharing strategies and discussing outside of the game, that social learning is so important for future-ready skills. So these 4 pillars of learning are a useful framework. And again, I encourage you to use this framework to evaluate EdTech tools and learning apps, whether you're coming at it from the point of view as an educator using these apps or a designer creating them. Really think carefully about what you're creating or using, and does it demonstrate these 4 pillars that are going to lead to good learning? So keep that in mind as a useful tool. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about how to leverage this trend of digital play, right? It's easy to look at this and say, okay, there's playful stuff out there, but I don't know how to use it. How do I start? How do I start using digital play in my school, in my classroom, or with my teacher training? So here's the advice that I would give you. First, think about the aim. What are your learning objectives? So any kind of digital play, it should align with what you want students to learn, what skills you want them to build. So think about what your aims are. It could be content knowledge, conceptual understanding of, geometry or algebra. It could be critical thinking skills. It could be social emotional learning. Whatever it is, make sure that you know what it is that you're trying to build in your students. The next step is evaluate. So choose playful digital tools that really meet those goals that you set out. And remember to look for those 5 characteristics of play and the 4 pillars of digital apps. Those will be great indicators that that digital tool that you either want to use or have created is going to support playful learning and meaningful skill building. So make sure that the tool that you're using is aligned with your goals. The next one is play. Of course, don't lose the playfulness in your implementation. And this can happen. There are sometimes teachers who use Scratch, a very playful tool, but end up kind of having students all walk through the same exact steps. And that is less playful. And when it's less playful, you're going to get less value out of it. So remember those elements of play and remember to let students unleash their creativity and really engage with those elements of play while they're using the tool. And then finally, reflect. As educators, we know that reflection is so important to learning. It's how we solidify our understanding. It's how we finalize and build those skills. So when you're using a new digital tool, guide teachers and students themselves to discuss their experience. Think about why this was a good experience for them. What skills did they build? What was it about that app or tool that helped them learn? And in doing that, you will not only be able to see how successful the implementation was, but you'll get an even deeper understanding of what it is about that tool that resonates with your students. So I think these steps are important to keep in mind, whether you're a designer or developer creating EdTech tools that you want to be more playful, or if you're an educator or an educational administrator, choosing EdTech tools if you want to leverage the value of digital play. And that is a little bit about the background of learning through play, the research on it, some examples of what it can look like. Thank you so much for listening. I really encourage you to try some digital play with your students, even in small ways. Sometimes it feels like a big leap. Sometimes it feels like, I don't know if we're ready, if the parents, if the other stakeholders are ready for playful learning, but find small ways that you can bring it into your teaching. It is not only engaging, but it really does lead to deeper learning and more curious, independent learners. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much to Louisa Rosenheck. Kahoot is a very renowned education platform, and many teachers in Korea is using this Kahoot. So I can see a lot of exciting posts. Exciting comments posted in the YouTube. Really, Kahoot was a useful platform that we used during the remote learning. I think it was served as an opportunity for further development in EdTech. And it's so interesting how students can learn while playing games. So I think it's an excellent platform. So she delivered the presentation titled Digital Play for Learning. We will see you in a while at our Q&A session shortly. Thank you for your presentation.
Now let us move on to the next presentation. The next presenter is Mr. Jungmin, Director of HUNET. He's going to give us a talk on the topic of digital transformation in education. And he will talk about how digital technologies can be utilized in education. There are a lot of participants who have high expectations for Mr. Hong's presentation. He worked as a HR personnel at LG Group and began his career in corporate education. He is the director of the Edutech Research Institute, and he also holds Cyber MBA. He's responsible for the planning and development of various programs and solutions leading HRD and Edutech in Korea. He also authored 3 books on this topic. So he'll be able to provide a new perspective on digital technologies in education. So Director Hong, the floor is yours. So my name is Jungmin Hong, and I will talk about the digital transformation in education. I represent the corporate sector in 2019. Many companies were interested in digital transformation. They wanted to innovate and digitalize business models, and they also wanted to digitalize their business processes. And they established 2-year plans and 3-year plans. In 2020, because of the pandemic, we saw acceleration of the digital transformation. He's the chairman of Microsoft, and in a meeting, he said the digital transformation, which would take 2 years, was done in 2 months because of COVID-19. As such, of course, we are living in the age of digital transformation. Now I'd like to talk about contents. Of course, contents are changing as well. This is related to the music markets of the US. We used to purchase CDs. Also, we purchased LPs to listen to music. So 90% of the music listening was related to purchasing CDs in the past. But later, the number of people who purchase CDs to listen to music was reduced to 10%, but we now enjoy various channels to consume musical contents. And because of the advancement in technology, we can consume musical contents utilizing channels that I choose. In early 2000s, probably you watched TV to watch famous TV shows. We have IPTVs, Netflix, and other services and channels, and you can choose your channels to consume certain media or some certain video. Now learners, they can also are supposed to select their channels, but it is not the case. So I'm going to now talk about the corporate education or trainings that are taking place in companies. In 2009, 77% of people were getting on-site classroom-based trainings, but that was reduced to 30%, and digital e-learning contents accounted for 26%. As such, we're seeing these changes in corporate trainings. Now learners access their training contents through various channels. Now we had the transition from offline education to online education, and the change was accelerated because of the pandemic. And micro-learning is also widely used, and virtual learning is widely popular. And we also have blended learning, which combines online and offline education, and we also have flipped learning. Of course, we have various types of digital learning, and there's one thing that is particularly superior to other things. If we get sick, we get injections, we get shot, but we also get some pills. Of course, there are different types of digital learning related tools, and educators, learners, and students need to understand the pros and cons of different modes of e-learning. These are some of the tips that I'd like to share with you about virtual learning. Sometimes on-site training is more effective, and sometimes students cannot concentrate, so we want to make sure that the online courses are not too long. Instead of 15 minutes, it's better to have lessons that are less than 30 minutes or around 35 minutes at maximum. So short forms are more effective. And when it comes to the educational benefits, interaction is really important in e-learning platforms. annotations and feedbacks and other types of communication should be encouraged on e-learning platforms. Now I'd like to talk about the flipped learning. Asked about the differences between flipped learning and blended learning. Flipped learning is considered to be the optimum way of combining offline and online learning. And as you see here, we have some theories about e-learning and flipped learning. When Aaron Sam and John Berg asked this single question, of course, offline education is really important, and we need to make sure that we improve the offline education. This is the pyramid learning from NTL. And if you receive a lecture, you remember 5%, and if you read something, you remember 10% of what you learned. And sometimes it's really important to have the verbal explanations in order to improve the memory of the learners. And in offline settings, practicing or giving lectures or other methods that are more effective in offsite settings or on-site settings should be utilized, and we use other modes of teaching in online settings. Of course, memorizing or remembering and understanding applying, as you see here at the bottom layers, but creating, evaluating, and analyzing are at the top of the pyramids in Bloom's taxonomy. And flipped learning's philosophy is really important, especially in offline learnings, and human-related aspects should be highlighted in flipped learning. In July 2016, we've created flipped learning models, and that has been provided to companies, and there are about 11,000 trainees, and we wanted to distinguish offline and online trainings, but we wanted to stick to these flipped learning principles, and we have these different types of curriculum, and things that are highly effective are highlighted, and at the same time, we also select those courses that are most effective in offline settings. And we utilized the same methods in categorizing all those courses, and for online trainings and for flipped learning sessions. And if you are organizing those sessions, I'd like to ask you to kindly understand what we did in order to promote learning. And we have micro-learning, and these also include the short-form videos. And for micro-learning, it is about providing contents that can be consumed in less than 5 minutes. And micro-learning is really important because we have mobile devices in our hands. 90% of the contemporary population use mobile devices to acquire new knowledge. And of course, we have TVs and other channels, so mobile is the device that we use the most. And there are a lot of interest in improving the penetration rate of mobile devices. Maybe mobile devices can be utilized for training and education. And if you look at the top 50 YouTube content, usually those highly popular contents are less than 2 minutes long. So the contents that are most suitable for mobile channel consumption is short-form videos, and those short-form videos can be used for micro-learning. If we have something that we don't know, of course, we don't have to ask a question to our teachers, but we search information on YouTube or on Google. We have a new learner's patterns of searching information online, but for longer contents available on e-learning platforms, those contents cannot be searched through search functions, and micro-learning can solve these problems. Millennials are digital natives, and they account for 40% of the Korean workforce, and they prefer shorter contents. In 2016, IBM's chief education officer said that the best way to train the employees is the micro-learning, and providing short-form contents became the practice, and the AI Watson now recommends the contents, and the daily user number increased by a significant margin. So of course, we are seeing a lot of changes that are happening in terms of educational contents. Now we have online classrooms, and we've seen already digital transition in education. And as was mentioned by the previous speaker, we now have concerns about the immersion and concentration and engagement of the learners. And also there are concerns about digital or learning gap. Whether it's e-learning or on-site classrooms or reading a book, of course students learn. The bottom 10%, it's really difficult to engage their participation. But with the online classrooms now widely popular, the 80% that who study anyway are not really focusing on their studies. There are content-oriented services and content management. In classrooms, we can do ice breakings, and we can also control and manage the classrooms. And so far, a lot of advancements were created, but in online settings, we only have digital contents. So going forward, we need to pay attention to the management and care. I'd like to give you an example. We have MOOC. You all know what MOOC is. And Harvard, Stanford professors, lecturers are available, but the completion rate is only 5 to 10%. So the quality of the content is really good, but because it's offered digitally, the level of engagement is really bad. But Coursera created Signature Track program, and it's a paid service. And for example, if the learners do not take a course, if a learner does not submit the assignment, the learners will be notified by emails and text messages and other channels, and the completion rate was increased to 50%. In online and digital environment, of course, the content is important, but at the same time, management and care are also very important. And there are some characteristics in digital learning. Compared to on-site classrooms, the level of engagement is low. For learning engagement is a very important issue. And for digital learners, they should be autonomous. Then they can watch the contents more attentively, and they also need to have higher self-confidence. And sometimes they have lower digital literacy. For online learners, they feel lonely, so it is important to make them not to feel lonely. And CISA, there was a micro-learning services launched, and when learners access, they choose seven of their personal interest and recommendations made to recommend the courses. And if the learners interact, points are accumulated, and it can be used to purchase some things on the website. So contents are provided at the same time, but the learners' management and care are also included in this online platforms. Stanford University conducted an experiment. There was an online trainings provided to a learner, and around 2%, there was a 2% completion rate. And there were some group of students who were encouraged to take the courses, 5 to 10 students, and the completion rate went up to 21%. In addition to those, teaching assistants were involved to encourage the students. You just need to let people feel that they're not alone. Of course, gamification is a very effective tool. So gamification uses a game-like functions, and point, badge, level, and leaderboard are 4 important elements of gamification. So learners can be given points, and there could be different levels of achievement, and depending on the engagement and depending on the completion rates, the ranking of the learning participation rate can be shown. And also, if you click the badge, problem is presented to the learner, and if they make it, get the correct answer, gifts can be given. and it could increase the completion rate as much as 4 times. Of course, management and care are also important, and there should be a lot of engagement and research on this matter. Before I finish my presentation, I'd like to talk about other things. I'll have to skip some topics in my presentation. In the digital environment, we need to think about the role of teachers and educators. This is what's called the Cubina. It's AI-based mathematics learners platform. And students solve mathematical problems, and it's read by the AI engine, and the AI continues to present the mathematical problems that are of similar levels. And the founder of this service said AI can better teach content by analyzing, assessing, and providing study assistance can be better done by human teachers. So there is always an involvement of human teachers. After taking the courses, the students get to have conversation or counseling sessions with the human teachers. And after solving the problems, the teachers can review the students' data and can provide coaching to the students on what they need to improve. Some say that AI-based mathematics is what it is, but I think it's more important to have the involvement of human teachers. So in order to master the grade 7 mathematical level, it will take 200 hours of time to complete all the courses required, but the number of hours that will be required if you use this platform will be a lot less. And so far, of course, I talked about the Bloom's taxonomy, and remembering is at the lower bottom, and creating and other elements are at the top. And we need the moments of education. We have the moments of education when we need the application of the learning, when we need to have major changes, we need to rely on education. So far, we've only focused on remembering and understanding aspects of education. However, now these functions will have reduced importance. There are so many information available online, and AI-based customized education will be provided. Then what do we have to do? We need to focus on the higher levels. We want to assist the students to improve their creating, evaluating, and analyzing. And these are more important elements in education.
그러면서 제가 이제 마지막으로 좀 하나 설명을 드릴 건데요. 옥스퍼드 대학에서
In Oxford University, there was a research conducted for many different jobs. The researchers analyzed different types of tasks associated with the jobs, and they measured or evaluated the possibility of AI replacing those tasks. And Mayo Academic Daily also conducted a similar research on around 500 or so jobs in Korea. And can you guess the likelihood of AI replacing the teachers? That's 0.44, which is lower than the religious fathers. And for secondary school teachers, it was around 1%. So AIs really cannot replace human teachers. A lot of people say that AI or machines will replace the role of human beings, but unlike our intuition, human teachers cannot really be replaced by AIs, but we need to familiarize ourselves with AIs. There are also the necessity of automating the things that humans do not play an important role, but rather we should be able to strengthen what we can do best in order to remain as an important coaches and assistants for our teachers. So thank you very much for your insightful presentation. And we are getting a lot of comments and encouraging messages about all the presentations of this session. So once again, I'd like to thank all the speakers for their presentations talked about the micro-learning, and it is really important to have the involvement of human teachers, and students should not feel lonely when they study alone on e-learning platforms. So we review the trends that are happening in education. It's finally the final presentation of the forum.
From CLASSUM, CEO Chaelin will deliver her presentation. So she will deliver a presentation titled "The Problem is Communication. Forced training is not fun." And she's going to present the first step toward creating a continuous learning environment that stretches beyond fixed curriculums. Chaelin Lee founded CLASSUM, a communication center group platform, to reform the traditional learning environment where students found it difficult to comfortably ask even one question. Currently, CLASSUM is used by more than 6,000 organizations in 32 countries, including Samsung, LG, Seoul National University, and Yonsei University. In 2021, CLASSUM was spotlighted in the Forbes Asia 100 to Watch list, and Lee was also recognized as a member of the Forbes 30 under 30 Asia for her innovative approach to communication challenges in education. So that means she's less than 30 years old. Wow. I look forward to the presentation. Let's begin. Hello, I am CEO of CLASSUM. My name is Chaelin Lee. We have a very high interest in EdTech, and now just going beyond as part of this experience, they realize that it can be used as a tool for their education. I think that is why the interest is increasing more than ever before. Then, if we introduce EdTech, will we naturally be successful? From many companies and university institutions who have used this EdTech before, have you achieved a positive result? So from what perspective should we view this EdTech, and let's think about how we can make it into a success. First, there might be audience who are not familiar with the CLASSUM, so I'll briefly explain to you about CLASSUM before I move on to the main part of my presentation. So the first question they ask me when I see the word CLASSUM, they ask me if this is a dating app. But actually, CLASSUM is a combination of the word class and forum. When we typically talk about class, we think of an image where the professor lectures to deliver knowledge to students, and that's what we experience in the past. But in the CLASSUM, we believe that the class should be like a forum where we ask questions, give answers to each other, and have discussion. So based on this philosophy, the CLASSUM was founded, and I have been making or developing various platforms as it was introduced by the moderators. Currently, it is being used in 32 countries worldwide by more than 6,000 companies and schools, starting from large companies like Samsung and Market Curly and Seoul, Yonsei universities and KERIS universities and high schools and junior schools. It is used by various places, and it is used to enhance participation and engagement. So it's not just growing in Korea, but it has been recognized worldwide. So we attracted over $7.5 billion investment from Silicon Valley, and we were awarded as a winner of the GES Awards, HP TRACK, among 130 countries and 1,200 companies. And we were also selected in the Forbes Asia 100 to Watch list, and we are official partner of some outstanding companies in this area, like Zoom and Kahoot. So we heard from Kahoot. Especially, we are official partner of Kahoot. So I'm sure you had a lot of difficulties using various tools, but all these different tools are combined in CLASSUM. So we are offering different kinds of education tools like Zoom, Gather, Metaverse, Kahoot, and Padlets. So all these various tools can be used in
자, 그러면 클라썸에 대한
CLASSUM.
소개는 여기까지 마치고요. 오늘의 본
And
주제로
the purchase can
넘어가도록
also be
하겠습니다.
made from CLASSUM. So let me move on to the main part of my presentation. I want to start with the keyword education. So when you hear the word education, what image comes up to you in your mind? Exciting, fun, really eager to do, or something that you want to do, or very quiet, boring, something that you have to endure? Or is this the image that comes up to your mind? So if you think about the learning that you had in your schools or at companies, or when you think about the online courses, you think about having to have a patience to reap the fruits. So in the education field, there is an educator in front of the classroom, and then they deliver a lecture, and then we take notes and we try to memorize it to take an exam.
사실 이런 교육 현장은요.
But
200년 전에도
this kind of education field existed in very old times, like in 19th century or 20th century. So
라는 말이죠. 200년 전의 모습들도요.
if
사실
we
지금과
think
별반
back
다르지
200
않은
years ago,
모습들을
the
볼 수가
classroom
있습니다.
was pretty much the same as it is now.
코비드19로 인해서
But
좀 교육
with
현장이
the
많이 달라지지 않았나요?
COVID-19,
라는 생각도 해보실 수 있을 것 같아요.
You may wonder, hasn't that caused a lot of change to the education field? Yes, that is right. There has been a lot of change that took place with the COVID-19. So let's see what kind of changes it brought on our education field. So from learners' point of view, it's the same. There's only one thing that changed. Originally, educator lectured in front of them, but now they have went inside the monitor and they're still lecturing in the monitor. So it's very similar to what we saw in the e-learning landscape. So they open up their laptop and then they listen to what the lecturer is saying, and then they take notes and memorize to take an exam. But you can think whether this is really important, because we always say knowledge is meaningless in this kind of changing world. We shouldn't be conducting this kind of education, but it has not been changing so much. So do we have to change? Because even though we didn't change it much, there weren't much issue in the way we lead our life. But I realized that it's really now the time to change. After reading this article, I studied computer engineering in KEIS University. In 2016, when I studied at the university, the key topic was AlphaGo. I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with AlphaGo, because people had a heated debate after AlphaGo beat human. And at our school, students, there was a boom of our students and learning deep learning. So the juniors asked their seniors, so I want to study deep learning, so where should I start? And among the seniors that provided answer to their junior students, there wasn't a single student who recommended to take courses from KEIS. They all recommended to take class of Andrew Ng's, who's renowned professor in Harvard. So just with the click of a mouse button, we can listen to these outstanding lectures. And this kind of phenomenon has further accelerated with the outbreak of COVID-19. So even though lecture has been delivered back from the 19th century, now that the lecture is delivered online, now students can listen to various kinds of lecture and compare it among other universities. And 99% of students started demanding for tuition refund nationwide. And same thing in the US. So if we compare the Netflix cost, and then they started comparing the Netflix fee with the Harvard University enrollment fee. So Netflix, very good image quality. And why do I have to pay 100 times more for Harvard tuition? That's the question that students started to ask. And in the companies, why they started asking question, why do we have to apply e-learning and offline? If we can learn this knowledge online, why do we have to really compute this physical space? And they started asking question about the efficacy and effectiveness of offline workshop. So how did receiving the offline training really
교육을
help them
들었던
in
것들을
performing their
질문하고
jobs.
답하고
Because
내가 직접 적용해보고 주변의
have to be
지식과
able to ask
노하우를
questions,
나눠야
and then they have to
사실
actually
뭔가를
share
바꿀
what
수
they
있을 텐데
learned during the
그
workshop with
중간
other
다리가 끊어져
people.
있었음에
But that
한 번
middle
더
part was
절실하게
missing
느끼게
from
되는
the
계기가
bridge.
됩니다.
So
자, 그러면
COVID-19 was
우리가
an
이 현장을
opportunity
직접
for
겪었는데
people to
그래서
realize
앞으로는
this fact.
어떻게 해야 하냐라고
Now,
궁금하실 수
going
있을 것 같아요.
forward, what should we
전
do that
세계적으로
we have
이렇게 이야기를
identified
합니다.
this problem? So
앞으로의
this
모든
is the
기업들,
voice that's being
현장과
raised
학교들은요,
worldwide. So
기존에는
going on, all
어떤
the
콘텐츠를
institutions
제공한다는 것에서 충분한
will
의미를 찾을 수 있었습니다.
had a
나만 알려줄 수
meaning
있는
in
지식이기 때문에
providing
전
the
세계에서 이
contents because
말씀을
it's a
해줄 수 있는
contents
분이 몇 명 없었기 때문에
only the few people knew about, only few people could deliver. They found meaning in accessing that content, but now the meaning will be found in creating a channel for communication. So they are saying that going in the future, it has to be a forum for communication. We have to pull the good contents, and based on content, people have to ask questions, provide answers, and accumulate knowledge. And when the virtual cycle is formed, that could really deliver significant meaning to the education field. This also might seem very obvious to you. So didn't we all know that question is important? After class, educator always asks students, any questions? And silence. They start ignoring professor's eyes. They avoid making eye contact and wish that professor doesn't point at him or her. So I prepared a short clip. Let's watch it
수업을
together.
듣고 있었어요. 저는 수업 전 문제를 미리 풀어가는 편인데 어느 날 교수님께서
이건 정답이 0인데 쉬우니까 꼭 풀어볼 필요는 없겠죠?
라고 하시면서 넘어가시는 거예요. 전 3이 나왔는데 말이에요. 그런데 주변 사람들은 아무렇지도 않은 걸 보니 아무래도 제가 틀린 것 같았어요. 그래서 다시 풀어보니 제가 실수한 부분이 있더라고요. 에이 뭐야, 내가 틀렸었잖아. 그래서 다시 풀어보니까 마이너스 1이 나왔어요. 더 혼란스러워졌어요. 질문을 했다가 제가 틀린 거면 어쩌죠? 뒤에서 비웃으면 어쩌죠? 손을 들었는데 교수님이 못 보셔서 1시간 같은 1분 동안 손을 들고 있으면 어쩌죠? 제 손 때문에 뒤에 있는 사람의 시야를 가리게 되면 어쩌죠?
오랫동안 말 안 해서 질문할 때
교수님
픽세게 나면 어쩌죠? 이미 한참 지났는데 저 때문에 수업의 흐름이 끊기면 어쩌죠? 저 때문에 수업이 더 늦게 끝나면 자, 수업 끝. 다음 시간에 퀴즈 볼게요.
네, 공감하시나요? 보통 학생분들
Can you all empathize with this video? Students, they laugh and they really emphasize it to the how when I show them in the class.
걱정하면서 질문을 삼키고요.
And if you are a new employee, you might
평가당하진 않을까
try.
걱정을 하면서 질문을 삼키곤 합니다.
You might be reluctant in asking questions
2016년도에 똑같은 일들이
in
벌어졌습니다.
your company. So this is what happened when I was in school, and same for my students, same for my peers. It's because they seem that there are much more smarter students
이렇게 우리가 계속 참고
near them, so they were afraid to ask questions. And when I was a student head of the Department of Computer Science, I took an initiative of a project. I made an open chat room for each course of the Department of Computer Science, and the assistant professor and the professors and the students, they fully engaged in conversation and asked questions and provided answers. It started with a very simple question like, have you checked the attendance, or is there exam tomorrow? And the question further developed, like, I tried the method A to solve the question, but can there also be a method B?
이야기가 나오기 시작했고요. 학생들의 뜨거운 반응 속에서 처음에는 4개의
And
동작에서 시작을
we started
했습니다.
off with 4 chat rooms in the beginning, but then it was further expanded to more than 40 to the entire Department of Computer Science, and it was adapted by other university.
저를 얼마 전에 찾아오고
And one of the students visited me and said,
전과를 해서 정말 친구가
I moved
없고
to a different major and I had no friends and I found it really difficult, and if I didn't have this kind of a chat room, I wouldn't have been able to survive. So after listening to this student's comment, I realized how important this chat room is. And there was one thing I regretted because this was a Kahoot room, there was a lot of limitation because there's mixture of questions and answers, and I have to get so many notifications whenever someone posts a message.
네이버 카페
So I'm sure that because there are neighbors, cafe, and bands, other educators experience the same issues.
그래서 이건 진짜 진짜 제대로 해결해야 하는
So we wanted to really tackle this issue, and about 5 years ago, I created CLASSUM, and for the past 5 years, we conducted a lot of experiments and we tested different functions, and that led to the creation of CLASSUM as it is today. And I was able to witness a lot of interest in our solutions, and it was possible because we conducted a lot of experiments, and there were three important things. First, we can ask questions without revealing our names. When you initiate a conversation, and if there is any barrier, of course, the barrier should be broken down. Of course, we have confidence in our teachers, but so we are not worried about the community being ruined. And it was really important to bring in the online communications onto the platform. We also utilized the data science in order to understand who's really participating, and we also have visualization functions, and those insights were used to motivate the students. And we started to see important changes. And this is a comment from a Seoul National University professor. As you see, the university uses LMS, and there is a Q&A board, and he did not expect any changes from using the solution. But after using CLASSUM for 3 to 4 months, he shared with us these positive comments, and he now realized that 300 questions have been exchanged with the students. And the same responses were obtained from companies. Because we are a manufacturing-based company, we are not sure where we will be really find it useful. And that was the initial comment. But now, community-based activities were really useful to engage with the employees, and the insights extracted from the data was used to improve their trainings. It was the comment from the corporate representatives. Here, one thing was common. We realized that people were shy, and that's why they did not ask questions. But actually, they couldn't ask questions. Of course, now you can ask questions and answers can be exchanged between different participants. At the same time, we can accumulate a lot of data about people's interactions and communications. It's not just checking the attendance of the participants. We can understand people's interest, and we can also accumulate data on the level of the students' engagement. And here, the data is continuously used, utilizing AI technologies. Among this data, of course, think about the new employees' orientations. You tend to receive similar questions from the new recruits, and AI technologies can provide answers to the commonly asked questions, and in just 5 seconds, the answers to the commonly asked questions can be provided. Of course, we used to have rule-based interactions of chatbots, but our solution is based on deep learning technology. Now, communication is enhanced, and then we also have data, and from data we can provide better questions, and that also further encourages the people's active engagement with the platform. And the data can be used to improve the competitiveness of our organizations, even our country, and it can be used to better serve the learners. In Korea, Samsung, LG, and other prestigious universities are using CLASSUM to change the existing practices. Surprisingly, there are also organizations without CLASSUM, but they are already receiving demand from their members. In a school, the candidate for the student body chairperson had a campaign pledge to introduce CLASSUM for their school. This person won, and this person took initiatives to introduce CLASSUM in the school. Of course, LMS was already being used, and there were a lot of students' criticisms about the LMS, but the introduction of CLASSUM was well received. Before, education was about creating content and was all about creating an archive of content. But now we realize the importance of communication in education. And here, the communication can also generate lots of data, which is used to upgrade the educational contents. So contents are not something that is created and used as it is. Rather, it can be updated and upgraded based on the interactions with the users. As people's knowledge and people's skills are updated, the update can also follow the upgraded knowledge of the users. So from the EdTech point of view, of course, we should not be satisfied with the fact that we've introduced the ed technology. Rather, the EdTech should be utilized as an important tool to enhance the overall aspects of education. So that's the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you. That was Chaelin Lee, CEO of CLASSUM. We had discussions on the digital transformation that is happening in education. So it is true that a lot of changes are happening within a very short period of time. Once again, thank you very much for your presentation. So we've listened to all three presentations of the session. Now let's move on to the live Q&A session, which is the final live Q&A session of the forum. And I'd like to thank all the participants for being with us until the last section of the forum. So the first question is directed to Ms. Chaelin Lee from CLASSUM. So an effective learning can take place if we use this type of technology. So there was a comment, and participation anonymously can motivate students' active engagement. That's another comment. And since we have a lot of teachers participating in this forum, I think they were really able to relate to your presentation. So there were also comments about Mr. Hong's presentation. And it was a really interesting presentation, of course, and we also thank you for your highly insightful presentation. And we also had a lot of messages about the presentation provided by Director Louisa Rosenheck.
So we have a question to Louisa Rosenheck from Kahoot. Participant with ID Hello Cupboard Prince asked the question. So digital play is very difficult to design it so that it has both significance and fun element into it. So when teachers want to link play with their curriculum, it's not that there's a ready-made or off-the-shelf play available so that they can apply it to their learning. So can you give us any tip so that teachers can apply this play into their teaching or learning?
Yes, that's a great question, right? So essentially the question is how to map playful learning onto your curriculum standards and your learning objectives. So in many cases, there are playful digital tools that are already designed specifically to support specific learning objectives. For example, there are digital games for math and science and other topics like inquiry skills and debate and argumentation and things like that. So there are really a large number of intentionally designed educational games out there. So those are great to check out. There are also many commercial games, so games that are not created for education, that are created for entertainment, but they can be used very well for education. Minecraft is a great example of this. And there are so many resources out there for ways that teachers have used Minecraft to align with English learning, with foreign language learning, with math, with really all kinds of subjects. And one thing that's great about tools like Minecraft is open-ended. So students are really creating their own world. And depending on what prompts and constraints you give them and what research you have them do, it is building on the content that they're learning in the class already. And then my last tip would be to really look at the tools like Scratch that are creative, tools for students to create their own content. Adobe tools, Adobe Creative Suite is another great one. They have all kinds of free licenses for teachers and so many tools for students to express themselves and create their own content. And Adobe is an example that also has a lot of lessons pre-made, ready to go, so that teachers can browse age range and subject area and choose lessons that already have a prompt and a learning objective, and then utilize, for example, the Adobe tools to play around with ideas, play with templates, create new things that really matter to students. So I think those are a few directions to look in. One is just to recap, intentionally designed educational games. Another one is entertainment games that can be used for education. And another one is EdTech tools that are open-ended and creative, so that you can align it and you can use lessons that fit with your curriculum already. And I hope that's helpful. I really encourage you to try using some of these tools and don't be intimidated. Just try playing around with some of these tools yourself.
Thank you very much. 고맙습니다, 디렉터님.
Thank you very much for your answer. So she introduced many different tools, and also there were some examples of digital tools. And there are some people already who are using Scratch in Korea. And somebody wrote, because we are seeing lower engagements, and maybe we can use plays in order to solve the engagement issues. So there was a comment. And critical thinking can be improved utilizing these playful tools, and it could also add fun to in our learning. So there was a comment from people who are using Scratch already. So once again, it's really important to try and experiment with different tools that are already available. Next question is Mr. Hong, and we also are getting a lot of questions as well about your presentation. And of course, delivery of knowledge can be done better by AI, and human teachers can sympathize with the students and also can provide individualized supports to students. So when it comes to what human teachers can do best, what will be some of the really important things that we can do as human teachers? So speaking of the role of human teachers, we are not just teachers of knowledge, but we should be able to manage the learning community. So unlike the traditional or conventional teachers, the personality education and students' engagement and interaction with the students are some of the things that human teachers can do the best. So instead of listing those things that we have to do, rather it is more about managing the learner's community. Thank you very much for your answer. So during your presentation, a lot of important things were suggested, and some wrote, you mentioned that making online learners not feel lonely is important, which I really agree with you. And again, there was another person who agreed with you. And having the involvement of the AI and human teachers, it will be really useful in improving our education. So those were some comments about your presentation.
So CLASSUM, which has been established over 5 years. Well, I think you got a lot of these questions because you have been making a very good path so far, and you made a very good progress in a very short period of time. So what is your future plan? How do you plan to develop this further? So if I look at the future development of CLASSUM, I think it will come more closer to digital transformation. So looking at this company is looking at the future of the digital transformation. So can I ask your future plan? We have finished the Industry 4.0 update. The reason why we named our Industry 4.0 was because going forward, the boundary between the educator and the learner will become meaningless.
교육자가 굉장히 명시되어 있고요.
So educator was very clear in the past that the educator and the learners were completely divided or separated. So educator had a lot of authority and learners had to follow educator. But if we look at the field, look at what's happening in the field. For example, if I am a developer and if the other developer,
개발자들이
there's a developer and a junior developer, they take a different step
개발자한테 오히려
com-
가르쳐주는
to what the senior developer has been doing. Now the junior developers are teaching the senior developer. So the technological cycle is becoming shorter and shorter. In the past,
하나의 기술을 연마를 하면은
if I become an expert in one technology, I could have enjoyed my entire life with that expertise that I've gained in one technology. But nowadays, the lifetime of a single technology is like 3 years or 5 years. So there's no clear division between the educators and learners, because educator can become learner at any time and learner can become an educator.
학습자끼리 서로
And
질문하고
before,
답하고 서로 가르쳐주고
the question and answer happened within this clear distinction. But going forward, if you click Q-Create, co-create mode, anyone can design an education and lead the class and engage in Q&A. So I think this kind of change will be further accelerated in the future. And all of the data that comes out from this kind of process can be utilized when I'm searching for knowledge and when I'm working at a workplace, because AI will be directly
최근에
connected.
그러니까 업그레이드를 단행을 하신 거예요.
So you have done an upgrade recently, right?
저도 신문에서 봤습니다.
Yes, I read that in the news.
교육자와 학습자를 구분하는 것이
So
아니라 이
there won't be any
내용들을
clear
저희가
distinction
지난
between the
다른 세션에서도
educator and the learners. I
이해를
think
볼 수가
we
있네요.
dealt this
볼까요?
topic
그러니까 뭔가를
often
알고
in
있는
our
분이
previous
이제,
session.
가르치는 입장이 될 수 있는 거잖아요.
So learner can become educator, right?
그래서 클래스를 열 수도 있고
So learner can open a class or make a study group.
됩니다.
Wow, I really look forward to seeing your upgraded version. So we'll take 2 more questions. We are already behind our schedule, but since this is our last session, let's take 2 more questions.
디렉터님께 마지막 질문입니다.
So last question to our speaker from overseas. So maybe the kids from less privileged families may have limited access to these highly advanced technologies, and maybe you can share with us your ideas in employing these new technologies in our public education.
Certainly, yeah. So, one thing about play is that there are so many ways to play. So not everybody may have access to, computers that can use the Adobe tools or even Scratch, but everyone has access to materials that you can use to play, and it doesn't have to be digital. This is something I will say. I mean, my background is in EdTech. It's what I do, but I am the first to say that not every problem has to be solved with technology, and it doesn't always have to be very modern technology. So there's all kinds of projects that you can do that use just recycled materials, found objects, all kinds of ways to play little games and invent your own games and create things just with everyday objects. And then if there's technology that you have to document or research, even if it's a mobile phone, you can look up some background on certain topics that you're interested in, or use the camera to take pictures and share, the instructions for your game that you've designed, or share something that you accomplished. So these are kind of small ways that I would say that the play and the learning is just as deep without technology. And then there are ways to kind of start to layer in low tech or more accessible technology, which is different in every region, in every community. So I think a big part of playful learning is doing the best you can with what you have, and remembering that learning can happen in very meaningful ways even without technology.
Thank you very much for your answer. 고맙습니다. 시간 관계상 이제 마지막 질문을 좀 소개를 해드려야 할 것 같은데 소장님께 드리도록 하겠습니다. 잭님이요. 소장님 에듀테크 연구소의 다양한 연구 결과 중에서 이번 에듀테크 코리아 포럼을 계기로 꼭 전해주고 싶은 인상적인 사례 하나만 꼽아서 소개해 주실 수 있을까요?
사례보다는 제가 좀 다른 말씀을 최근에 좀
좋습니다.
깨달았던 다른 말씀 좀
네.
드리고자 하는데 제가 이제 저희도 이제 휴넷이라는 플랫폼들을 많이 쓰고 있고 기술을 많이 활용하는데 제가 요즘에 많이 느끼는 거는 되게 기업마다 그 활용도가 되게 다른 거예요.
And a lot of companies use different technologies. And for some companies, utilizing technologies
궁수가 더
can be really different. It always depends on the person instead of what technology is being employed. And at the same time,
수학이라는 단어를 아마 못 들어보셨을 거예요. 전화로 배우는 수학.
you cannot imagine learning mathematics using a telephone. Usually, languages can be taught
테크놀로지가 아까도 말씀하셨지만 모든
using a telephone. Of course, technologies can always solve all the problems, but depending on the technology that we use, it all depends on
테크놀로지 대학 이해 이런 것도 되게 중요한.
the level of understanding on technology. I think you highlighted a really important aspect in utilizing education, technology for education. Any last word, Chaelin Lee, that you'd like to share with the audience?
그 IT라는 게 요즘에는
Well, the word
그 개인의 교육에
IT has become one of element of competencies in education.
기술로서 우리가 기술을 도입하는 것 자체가 목적이 아니라
So the goal is not in adapting or introducing technology, but we need to concentrate on the issues that we want to address with the technology so that we are not overwhelmed with technology, but rather we can utilize technology for our good.
테크 도입을 생각할 때
So before thinking about introducing EdTech, you have to think about what kind of problems there is in the education field that need to be addressed. Thank you very much
자, 이렇게 해서
for your
2022
comment.
에듀테크 코리아 포럼 마지막
So
세션,
that
마지막
has
시간,
brought us to the end of 2002 EdTech Korea Forum. I think we got a lot of
적극적인 참여와 소통,
insightful
감사
comments,
말씀드립니다.
questions, and
오늘 귀중한 시간
answers.
내주시고 좋은 말씀
Thank
해주신
you
세 분의
to
여성분께
wonderful speakers
말씀드립니다.
for being here with us
고맙습니다.
today. Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much. 자, 여러분 이렇게 해서 디지털 트랜스포메이션, 즉 DX가 어떻게 교육 분야에 적용될 수 있는지에 따라 어떤
So
방향으로
we have had the
나아가야
session
할지에 대해서
TRACK-C
오늘 마지막 세션
under the
함께
theme Global
하셨습니다.
EdTech Trends DX for every innovations of education. I would like to thank everyone for your presentations and thank you to the participants for your active participation. So now it's time to wrap up. There are participants who have stayed with us from the very beginning, and there are participants who joined in the middle. Even though there were some time differences, there are participants who joined us from a different time zone. Thank you very much. So we have completed all the open or public open schedule. I found it really pleasing to be the moderator, and I learned a lot of things, and I'm sure that you did too. And I can, all of you will post in the chat box. Yes. So in TRACK-D actually will be a private session. We will be conducting the TRACK-D to the invitees from the developing countries. So we will have to say goodbye here. I moderated this forum for the first time in 2020 EdTech Korea Forum when there was an outbreak of COVID-19, and many participants that have participated since 2020 have gave me a lot of cheering messages, and it was a very warm environment, including the interpreters and the organizers. Many people gave me words of encouragement, and I really want to thank everyone. And there has been an immense change in the education field with the outbreak of COVID-19, and the teachers and educators were hard, and I can imagine all the difficulties and the confusions that you all must have went through, and how you will successfully overcome all of those challenges. And thanks to your efforts and contributions, contribution. I think the EdTech all over the world is developing, and I was able to sense that through your comments that you posted, and I would like to ask for your continuous support. It was a great pleasure to be with you for this 2020 EdTech Korea Forum. We'll see you again next year, and next year we will come back with more timely and relevant speakers and topics. Thank you very much.